These are men that murder their entire families. We will be discussing one high-profile case and one more obscure case. A thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. I was so excited to see that there are 301 of you currently, which I am so grateful for. Also, how cute is the pop filter that I made for this mic? It's got little murder weapons all over it. Knives, saws, hatchets, blood. It's a murder mic, and I love it. Alright guys, let's get into it. Our first case will be that of Christopher Watts, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, as he has been the subject of many documentaries in the last few years. The summer of 2018 should have been a joyous one for the Watts family. Husband Chris Watts, then 33, and wife Shanann, 34, just found out that they were expecting a son to join 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste in their suburban home of Frederick, Colorado, about 27 miles north of Denver. As the family balanced Chris's job as an operator at reacts by saying, "That's awesome." On June 17th of 2018, Shanann would post a Father's Day message to Chris on Facebook. "Chris, we are so incredibly blessed to have you," the message says. "You do so much every day for us and take such great care of us. You are the reason I was brave enough to agree to number 3. From laundry to kids' showers. You are incredible, and we are so lucky to have you in our life. Happy Father's Day." In June of 2018, Chris would start talking to co-worker Nicole Kessinger. Nicole Kessinger works in Anadarko Petroleum's environmental department and would see the operators, including Chris, on the way to the fridge. Chris came by her office and struck up a conversation one day. They have their first meeting outside of the office later in the month. According to the Denver Post, Chris sees Kessinger about 4 or 5 times a week, and they start a physical relationship in early July. He tells her that he's almost divorced. Later that month, while Shanann and the girls are out of town in North Carolina, he tells Kessinger the divorce is final. Insider reports that Kessinger goes to Chris's home for the first time on July 4th, and they have their first phone call on record on July 7th. They also go on a date to Shelby American Collection Car Museum on July 14th and spend the night at Great Sand Dunes National Park on July 28th, all while his family is away. On July 30th, he gives her a love note before joining his family on vacation. Despite it being a family vacation, texts that Shanann forwarded to a friend show signs of trouble between the couple. Further messages also show that there was tension between her and Chris's parents. Just weeks after they started talking, Kessinger's cell phone data shows that she has looked at wedding dresses online for over 2 hours. August 9th of 2018, Shanann leaves on a business trip to Arizona. After confiding to friends about her troubles with Chris, she texts a friend that she and Chris had their best talk yet before she leaves on her trip. She even drafts a handwritten letter to him. On August 11th of 2018, Chris hires a babysitter to go out with Nicole Kessinger. While Shanann is away, Chris gets a babysitter, saying that he's going to a baseball game with coworkers, but goes to a bar with Kessinger instead. On August 13th of 2018, at 1:48 a.m., Shanann returns from her business trip. In the wee hours, around 2 a.m., friend Nicole Atkinson gives Shanann a ride to her home on the 2800 block of Saratoga Trail after she returns from the business trip. August 13th of 2018, Chris would kill Shanann and their daughters. Chris wakes Shanann as he's getting ready to go to work and wants to talk about their marriage and future, according to his later confession. Despite Shanann carrying their unborn son, who they have already named Nico, he tells her about his affair and that their marriage will not last. Celeste in the back seat and puts her body in an oil tank, and does the same with Bella in another tank. Chris also buries his wife's body in a shallow grave nearby, as he later confessed from prison. The oil tanks that he put his daughters in had an opening of roughly 8 inches, so he would have really had to manhandle and shove their tiny bodies into those oil tanks. Chris later tells Denver ABC affiliate, "I left for work early that morning, like 5:15 to 5:30, admitting that he and Shanann had an emotional conversation." August 13th of 2018 at 1:40 p.m. Atkinson, Shanann's friend, grows concerned and contacts local police. Later that day, Atkinson becomes worried when she doesn't hear from Shanann. "I called her and texted her several times," she says. "I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning because she's pregnant. She didn't show up for it, and I was even more concerned." Shanann is reported missing around 1:40 p.m. that day. Atkinson calls the police, who do a welfare check. Shanann's phone, keys, and purse are found at the house. According to the news station's husband, Chris says, "She said she was going to a friend's house with the kids, and that's the last thing I heard, and that was it. It was very vague." A day later, on August 14th, Chris pleads for his family's return on the local news. As the Colorado Bureau of Investigation issues an endangered missing alert, Chris talks to Denver's ABC affiliate and pleads for their return. "Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring them back." A day after that, on August 15th, Chris would fail a polygraph test and then admit to killing his wife, falsely blaming her for smothering their daughters before. The FBI joins the search for the missing mother and daughters. Chris fails a polygraph test and confesses to his father, Ronnie, and then officials, that he killed Shanann, but falsely claims that the reason for his murder was because she had smothered their daughters to death. On August 16th, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's bodies will be found. The 3 murdered bodies are recovered at Chris's work site. The same day, Chris appears in Weld County Court for a bond hearing, which is denied. Also on this day, Kessinger speaks to police saying, "I legitimately think his cheese was sliding off his cracker long before he met me." "Okay, ma'am." August 21st, Chris will be charged with first-degree murder. A week after he pleaded for their safe return, Chris is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, plus 2 additional first-degree charges for victims being 12 or younger. Additionally, he faces Chris was like the epitome of being angry, the epitome of showing a rage, the epitome of losing your mind, he said. Even admitting that older daughter Bella asked if he was going to do the same thing he did to his sister, did to her sister, and that the 4-year-old tried to fight back. Chris would later admit that Bella just kept saying, "Daddy, no. Daddy, please, no," as he smothered her to death. November 18th of 2019, Chris is ordered to pay Shanann's parents $6 million. Almost a year after Shanann's parents filed the civil suit, Weld County Judge Todd Taylor rules that Chris owes Shanann's parents $6 million. That's $3 million for each death. I am so sorry for the absolute asshole that is gunning his piece of shit car down the road. Sorry, folks. Where were we? That's $3 million for each death and $3 million for emotional pain. The amount will grow with 8% interest. While they'll unlikely get any of the money, it prevents Chris from profiting from the murders in any way. Chris would go on to have several interviews with a woman named Sherilyn Cadle. She would go on to write a book that included much of these letters and conversations that she had with Chris Watts. And this is one of the letters that Chris wrote to Sherilyn. Dear Sherilyn, hello again. I hope you are doing well. It has been awesome talking with you on the phone, but I know the 15-minute time frame is a pain. Sometimes I get right back on the phone, but right now there are other inmates that like to be on the phone as much as I do. So I respect their time as well. How's your dad doing? I've been praying on that every day. Speaking of phone calls, Chris Watts, even at this time, receives many fan letters from women that are very sexually explicit and have declarations of love for this man. He has absolutely I have no idea. Like, he just keeps this social circle running while he's in prison with all these women writing him letters. It's wild. Anyway, back to the letter. Yes, that petition really blew my mind that people really want to make me suffer like that. Even if they did take down my pictures, they can't take my memories. So, to that effect, there was a petition that I believe 20,000 people signed that the pictures that Chris had in his cell of Shanann and their children should be removed, as he should have no right to have pictures of the family he murdered in his jail cell. So, even if they did ever take my pictures, they can't take my memories. An inmate from another institution wrote me about that subject and said, if they take your pictures, they would need to take the pictures from the other 500 to 600 people that have their family pictures up on their cell and are convicted of the same act. Do I feel like I should be incarcerated for the act I committed? I most definitely think so. Do I imagine myself ever doing anything like this or being a danger to society? I most definitely think not. If I were ever to be released, I know I would go straight to a ministry and start going to jails and prisons to help inmates. Possibly even be a chaplain. Maybe the laws will change one day. My attorney team could see I was different, and they knew that this was a one-time occurrence for me. They told me that in Europe, the law is that I would serve 20 years or so for homicide. there's hope for everyone to live outside prison walls. I know physically I'm behind these walls, but my spirit is free with Christ. If God keeps putting it on your heart that there is more to the story than what I told the FBI, you're correct. I don't like saying stuff like that over the phone because I'm never certain when they screen my calls. I know I already told you the vision I had before August 13th when I was lying in bed and all the lights were on in the loft and downstairs, but I felt so alone. That's exactly what happened April 14th when I was lying in bed. I don't know if you want this in the book or if God does, but here are the things I left out. 1. On August 12th, when I finished putting the girls to bed, I walked away and said, "That's the last time I'm going to be tucking my babies in." I knew what was going to happen the day before, and I did nothing to stop it. I was numb to the entire world. I had literally taken my kids to a birthday party, played with water balloons, had an amazing time, sang songs, all the way home, gave them a bath and a shower, ate dinner, read bedtime stories, and sang bedtime songs, and still nothing registered. When Shanann had to be somewhere, I always enjoyed taking the girls places or playing outside because it was our opportunity to bond. And still, the night before, I couldn't stop myself from what I knew would occur the next morning. Number 2, August 13th, morning of. I went to the girls' room first before Shanann and I had our argument. I went to Bella's room, then Cece's room, and used a pillow from their bed to kill them. That's why the cause of death was smothering. After I left Cece's room, then I climbed back in bed with Shanann, and our argument ensued. After Shanann had passed, Bella and Cece woke back up. I'm not sure how they woke back up, but they did. Bella's eyes were bruised, and both girls looked like they had been through trauma. That made the act that much worse, knowing I went to their rooms first, and knowing I still took their lives at the location of the batteries. Sorry guys, I hit my mic. Number 3, the reason the medical examiner found oxycodone in Shanann's system is because I gave it to her. I thought it would be easier to be with Nicole if Shanann wasn't pregnant. I don't know if this was a spiritual visit, but I had a dream Cece was dancing next to the chair in my cell. When she was dancing, all of my folders on the chair started moving, and I thought she was in trouble, so I said, "Watch out, get away, watch out." Then I woke up. I'm hoping she comes back. I hope everyone comes to visit me. I'm trying to see if I can clear my head better before I go to sleep. I like the John 10:10 passage you sent. I wish I could have had an open ear to hear the Lord calling me back in June, July, and August. If we run after sin, we won't hear our shepherd calling us. I couldn't discern between the good spirits and the evil spirits, and that eventually lodged me into a deep pit I couldn't climb back out of. Take care, and God bless. Chris. Nicole would go on to move away from Colorado and change her name. I think she faced, a lot of harassment after this happened. Whether or not she knew what he was doing, we will not know. But I do believe that they had communication, recently in the last year or so, which I don't think legally he's supposed to be having any contact with her, but I guess she's one of the people that's been writing So, moving on to our second case. This is the more obscure case, but nonetheless disturbing. This is the case of Ronald Gene Simmons. On December 22nd of 1987, Ronald Gene Simmons began a killing spree that would be the worst mass murder in Arkansas history, and the worst crime involving one family in the history of the country. His rampage ended on December 28th, 1987, leaving dead 14 members of his immediate family and 2 former co-workers. Ronald Gene Simmons was born on July 15th of 1940 in Chicago, Illinois. It appears that his father, William, would die of a stroke 3 years after his birth, and within a year of his father's death, his mother had remarried, and his stepfather was a civil engineer for the U.S. Army. It moved the family to Little Rock in 1946, the first of several transfers that would take the family across central Arkansas over the next decade. On September 15th of 1957, Simmons dropped out of school and joined the U.S. Navy. His first station was Bremerton Naval Base in Washington, where he met his wife, Becky. They would marry in New Mexico on July 9th of 1960. Over the next 18 years, the couple had 7 children. In 1963, Simmons left the Navy, and approximately 2 years later, he joined the Air Force. During his 22-year military career, Simmons was awarded a Bronze Star, the Republic of Vietnam Cross for his service as an airman, and the Air Force Ribbon for excellent marksmanship. Simmons would retire on November 30th of 1979 at the rank of Master Sergeant. On April 3rd of 1981, Simmons was being investigated by the Cloudcroft, New Mexico Department of Human Services for allegations that he had fathered a child with his 17-year-old daughter Sheila. Fearing arrest, Simmons fled to Ward in late 1981 and then to Dover in the summer of 1983. The family took up residence on a 13-acre tract of land that would become known as Mockingbird Hill. The residence was constructed of 2 older model mobile homes joined to form one large home, and was surrounded by a makeshift privacy fence as high as 10 feet tall in some places. The home did not have a telephone or indoor plumbing. Simmons worked a string of low-paying jobs in the nearby town of Russellville. He quit a position as an accounts receivable clerk at Woodline Motor Freight after numerous reports of inappropriate sexual advances. He went to work at Sinclair Mini Mart for approximately a year and a half before quitting on December 18th of 1987. Evidence indicates that Simmons bludgeoned and shot his wife on December 22nd of 1987. Simmons also bludgeoned and shot his visiting son, 29-year-old Ronald Gene Simmons Jr. He then strangled his 3-year-old granddaughter. All 3 bodies were later found in a shallow pit were separated and killed individually by strangulation and or drowning in a rain barrel. Their bodies, too, were found in the hole for the outhouse. The older Simmons children had been invited to the Simmons home on December 26th of 1987 for an after-Christmas dinner. 23-year-old William H. Simmons II, his 21-year-old wife, Renata, and their 20-month-old son were likely to first arrive. William and Renata were shot, and their bodies were left by the dining room table and covered with their own coats and some bedding. The child was killed and placed into the trunk of a car behind the Simmons home. Next to arrive were Simmons' 24-year-old daughter Sheila and her husband, 33-year-old Dennis, as well as their children, 7-year-old Sylvia. This was the daughter of Sheila and her father's incestuous sexual relationship, and 21-month-old Michael. Sheila was shot and her body was laid on the dining room table and covered with a tablecloth. Simmons shot Dennis and strangled Sylvia. I'm so sorry, that was my dog. Michael was strangled and placed into the trunk of yet another parked car. Later this same day, Simmons drove to Russellville, where he stopped at a Sears store and picked up Christmas gifts that had been ordered but had not made it in before the holiday. Later that night, he drove to a private club in Russellville. Then he went home and waited out the weekend. On Monday, December 28th, Simmons drove a car that had belonged to his son, Ronald Jr., to Russellville. He purchased a second gun from Walmart. His next stop was the Peel, Eddy, and Gibbons law firm. That would be my dog's nails clacking on the hardwood floor, and she's staring at me right now. Nori, go to bed. Where were we? After entering the building, Simmons shot and killed receptionist Kathy Cribbins Kendrick. He next went to the Taylor Oil Company, where he shot and wounded Russell Taylor, the owner of the Sinclair Mini Mart where he had worked, and then shot and killed Jim Chafin, a fireman and part-time truck driver for Taylor Oil. Simmons shot at and missed another employee before exiting the building. Simmons then went to the Sinclair Mini Mart where he shot and wounded Roberta Woolry and David Sallier. His last stop was the Woodline Motor Freight Company. Simmons located his former supervisor, Joyce Butts, and wounded her in the head and chest. He then took worker Vicki Jackson at gunpoint into the computer office and advised her to phone the police. Simmons allegedly told Jackson, "I've come to do what I wanted to do. It's all over now. I've gotten everybody who wanted to hurt me." He surrendered to the Russellville police when they arrived. Simmons was sent to the Arkansas State Hospital in Little Rock for competency evaluation by staff psychiatrist Dr. Irving Kuo. Kuo found Simmons to be sane and capable of standing trial. Doc Irwin and John Harris were appointed by the court to represent Simmons. The prosecuting attorney was John Bynum. Jury selection for the first trial took less than 6 hours. Simmons was convicted on May 12th of 1988 in Franklin County Circuit Court for the deaths of Kendrick and Chafin. On May 16th, Simmons was found guilty of 14 counts of capital murder and the deaths of his family members on February 10th, 1989, in the Johnson County Circuit Court, with Judge Patterson presiding. Bynum offered a possible motive when he presented an undated note that was discovered in a safety deposit box at a Russellville bank after Simmons' arrest. The letter seemed to indicate a strong love-hate relationship between Simmons and his daughter Sheila. After the judge ruled the letter admissible, Simmons lashed out at Bynum, punching him in the face, and then unsuccessfully struggled for a deputy's handgun. Officers rushed him out of the courtroom in chains. Simmons was sentenced to death by lethal injection on March 16th of 1989. He again waived all rights to the appeal. KTHV reporter Ann Jansen conducted a series of interviews with Simmons in February and March of 1989. On March 1st of 1989, Simmons was found competent to waive his rights to appeal his conviction. However, the filing of Whitmore v. Arkansas challenged this right. Reverend Louise Franz and Jonas Whitmore contended that Simmons using his right to refuse appeal in fact jeopardized the appealing rights of other death row inmates. By a 7-2 vote, the Supreme Court justices threw out this appeal. However, the ongoing legal proceeding had prevented the execution of Simmons from being carried out. Simmons was watching television and eating what he thought would be his last meal when the news of his stay of execution was announced. On May 31st of 1990, Governor Bill Clinton signed Simmons' second execution warrant for June 25th of 1990. This was the quickest sentence to execution to death time in United States history since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. Simmons refused all visitors, including legal counsel and clergy. His last words were, "Justice delayed, finally be done, is justifiable homicide." No family members claimed the body, so Simmons was buried in a pauper's plot in Lincoln Memorial Lawn in Lincoln County. Wow, I'm telling you, people never cease to amaze me. We as a species are fucking wild. Thank you again to everyone who has subscribed and commented and left feedback for the channel. You guys are great, and I appreciate all the views, especially for my last couple of videos. The audio has changed slightly, and I'm hoping it's going to work out okay. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night and have sweet dreams. See you guys on the